Like I almost said Fall Out Boy, the Fastball song.
The way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Oh,
Where were they going
without ever knowing the way?
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Anyone can see the road that they walked on was paved in gold. It's always summer, they'll never get cold. They'll never get hungry. They'll never get old and gray.
You can see their shadows wandering off somewhere.
They won't make it home, but they really don't care. Did we go back? We might have.
No.
Never get hungry.
No. It's because it's
What?
Really don't.
The more they happy, that is yeah. There.
That's how it ends.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm pretty sure. Hello and welcome to the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my friend Kirk. Say hi, Kirk.
Hey, how's it going?
And, no, that's weird. You were just like polite and normal. I don't like that. And also, we're joined by our good friend Benny. Say hi,
Well,
Benny.
no. Do it again.
I'm teasing.
No.
It's a bit.
No.
Fuck it. Okay.
I don't
Do
like
it
it when
again.
Mom and Dad fight.
Keep it in. Keep this in, Brent.
Fuck it. We'll do it live.
Am I going to have 2 Christmases?
Nah.
I think we're tone setting for the rest of the episode.
Hell yeah.
All right. And Benny's here too. Hi, Benny.
I'm sad, but also I think I'm getting double presents.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, fellas, how we doing?
Broken inside, evidently.
I'm so smooth.
Yeah.
My transitions are like silk.
Yeah.
So,
Like butter.
Kirk, what are you drinking over there, buddy?
Fucking, I don't know.
What does any of it mean?
Yeah. No, Yingling's Bongo Fizz. I had a buddy of mine come back from Pennsylvania. And they have a lot of stuff out there by Yingling still that we don't get here.
Right.
I mean, we do get Yingling here, but not all of it.
Right.
Brought back a bunch of the stuff.
Some of it stays there because they drink beer there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I got Yingling's.
What?
I know. Shocking.
Yeah. Well, the Quakers aren't going to drink it, so.
Yeah, there's lots of other Germans over there too, though.
Is there, though?
There are.
I don't know.
There's a town called King of Prussia there. They're pretty German.
Well, I was looking for an excuse to make fun of Philly, so here we go.
Do we?
No. No, I was just going to say Philadelphia's garbage.
Right.
That was pretty much it. Like, congrats.
It's like what's the Flyers mascot, the fuck around and find out guy. Oh my god, what's his name?
Oh, yeah, the weird orange thing.
Yes, I love him.
Like he looks like a bacteria. I don't
Well, and I love all the Philly sports mascots look like somebody started making a Muppet and then gave up halfway. It's like the Philly Fanatic.
It's felt and it's got an eye. It's good enough.
We're done. But it's like the Philly Fanatic. And I was asking my dad about it one time. And I was like, why did the Phillies have like a mascot who's like a green man with a trumpet for a nose instead of like, I don't know, Benjamin Franklin or something we associate with Philadelphia? He's like, well, he's the Fanatic. He loved Phillies baseball. He came across the universe to see it. And I'm like, okay, this is too much of an anime like story for a fucking baseball mascot.
Let's be honest, it's got to be something that's simple enough to look at when you're so drunk you can only see with one eye at a time. It's got to be something you could pick up without stereoscopic vision. Excuse me.
That's actually on the sign as you enter Philadelphia. Like, that's their whole, like,
No
motto.
stereoscopic vision allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will say, at least in Philly, they don't have the thing that they have in St. Louis, where this is just going to be us dunking on other random cities.
Hell yeah.
Welcome to episode 13, where the gang just dunks on other cities in the United States.
Because we're done dunking on ours.
Right.
We just don't hear it all.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that too. But yeah, where St. Louis has the what Aaron and I always call the oh shit pull-offs, where like you come off the highway and there's an option to just get right back on the highway without even like coming to an intersection. It's like you're drunk and you didn't mean to get off here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's fine. Get back on. It's okay, buddy.
Yeah, the more and more I ever visit Philadelphia, I'm like, Always Sunny in Philadelphia
Makes sense.
becomes less satire and more documentary.
I like Philly. It's a fun city.
Yeah, I take, yeah. Like, every city's gonna have its problems, just, you know, we just felt like dunking on Philadelphia a little bit today.
That's fair.
Or no, it was Pennsylvania. Close enough.
It's just, I mean, like...
That's like the only big city I can think of.
I feel like people from Pittsburgh would be very upset by that statement, but...
No, I don't think there's anything there worth any note.
Oh my god. Dude, like, my wife's whole family are Yoopers. Like, they'd be... Or not Yoopers. That's fucking Upper Michigan. That's my dad. What the fuck is the... Yinzers. Yinzers is Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah, if only anything interesting ever came out of Pittsburgh.
You know what?
This is
like I think they had a football team at some point.
Like,
I don't know.
half a percent chance out of 100 that we get any sort of following at all that gets us popular enough to travel, and then they're just gonna hold Kirk down next to a dumpster and kick the shit out of him.
Like how hold me down next to a dumpster.
Hey Kirk, why don't you start dunking on Detroit too, and then we'll just leave.
Nah, that's fine. I'll never go there anyways.
So Kirk got a critical case of lead poisoning.
Oh, I'm gonna come after you now.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, we're off the fucking rails, and we're 1 minute in. Great job, gentlemen.
Watch out, Des Moines.
No, don't worry about it. We're never going to Des Moines.
That's fair. Benny, tell me about your alcohol that you're drinking.
Maybe I shouldn't have as much.
We're gonna talk about mine, and then everyone's gonna understand where we're going.
Yeah, mine is like springtime air, and yours is straight up like Venusian Space Poison. Like,
yeah. I'm drinking.
There's the tagline for the episode right there.
I didn't mean to do that.
What happened? Stop it, dude. You're making me cry.
It's like it's contagious. Oh, shit.
Episode 13, Venusian Space Poison. Oh. Okay, I'm okay.
I am drinking. I'm drinking a Quirk, a pineapple orange whip.
Sure.
It's light and delightful.
That's excellent.
Very good.
Okay. That's nice.
Stop it. You're fucking gonna make me crack.
Okay. All right. Fans of the podcast will recall that we had all decided that I would not drink like 10% beer right before the podcast. That didn't happen. I'm sorry, fan. I've broken my promise. I'm drinking Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout, also known as Venusian Space Poison.
It says it right there on the label too.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, North Coast Brewing. It's very tasty. And as a Russophile who has devoted his life to uplifting things Slavic, I couldn't say no. And I'll leave it up to you whether that was a good decision on my part or not.
We may already have aired. Spoiler.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today, Brent?
Today the plan is to discuss 2 Nintendo 64 games, Star Wars Rogue Squadron and Star Wars Racer. We'll see how that goes for us. Right now I'm feeling lukewarm to fair.
There you go. Well, I mean, why did you pick these, Brent?
Yeah, so I've talked a little bit in the past about how my background in gaming was very much like arcade, the Super Nintendo, and then basically jack shit. Like whatever I could, find off of Mac Addict demo discs and hacked together 90s shitty emulators. We talked about that on the Link's Awakening episode, how emulation has been, kind of a major part of my gaming background since I was very young.
Your origin story, even?
My origin story. It's like my Batman villain origin story. But we had a Montgomery Wards in the town that we used to go into for supplies and victuals. And, my mom would often drop me off at the Montgomery Wards and then go do whatever shopping she needed to do in town.
Had to go see the cobbler and the dentist.
The same guy.
Yeah, same guy.
Yeah.
And taxidermy.
We'd get new shoes for our mule. But,
hell yeah.
Now it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd go to the Montgomery Wards and there was this one, because it was everything was run on commission. And so there was this one older dude who ran the electronics section, and we had the big ass Nintendo 64 kiosk. And I would always go up and play on that, and it was always Rogue Squadron. That was what was in there forever. Eventually, other games came and went, and I had bought my TV and my VCR and my rewinder, because that was a thing that you bought at the time, and my stereo and stuff with money that I'd made either working out or working. I made it working out. I was just lifting weights in front of oohing and eyeing old
lifting
ladies.
up that mule as he put on its shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And I would buy all this Admiral branded Montgomery Ward shit. And so this old guy, every time he'd walk by and notice me wandering around the electronics section, he'd be like, "Hey, do you want me to put in Rogue Squadron in the kiosk? I know that's the one, right?" And he's like, yeah. Eventually, I wound up, even though I knew my parents really couldn't afford a game console, and by this time it was probably 2000. The Dreamcast was out, I remember. The GameCube, I think, was either out or coming out, and there were still Nintendo 64s on shelves, but it was definitely a system on its way out the door. I asked for it for Christmas, and my parents wound up getting me an N64 that was the N64 Star Wars edition that came with Pod Racer, or I should say Star Wars Racer,
colloquially called Pod Racer.
Exactly.
Pod Racer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I got that, and I got Rogue Squadron for Christmas one year, and it was mind blowing. I was so excited. It was best Christmas ever, and we hooked it all up. I slammed in Rogue Squadron because fuck that racer shit. I threw that off to the side and booted it up, and it went, "This game requires the expansion pack to play."
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't remember, the N64 was crippled hardware at launch that had a tiny 4 kilobyte texture cache and no RAM, and was a cartridge based system, despite the fact that everybody was using disc based consoles at the time, and Nintendo was doing their absolute best to just commit bloody suicide on their way up the mountain as they were beating everybody else, and just opening up a bigger hole for Sony to walk through with the PlayStation. And so, yeah, my dad just rolls his eyes, looks over at me and goes, "So you can't play your game?"
Yeah. So to follow or to finish that up. So the N64, for anybody who doesn't know, had an expansion
Yes.
port in the top of the system next to the cartridge port, where you could add a what was it called?
It was
I think it was just
expansion
called an
pack.
expansion pack.
I couldn't remember if they had some sort of like mega extra pack or something like that. It was the 90s. It was This is how things worked, but it expanded exactly. It expanded the technical capabilities of the system.
Yeah.
Sorry, I will step back now.
No, you're fine. But I think it's funny because both Sega and Nintendo did the same thing, because the Saturn had an additional RAM cart as well. Which, by the way, just a small aside, I remember the images of the Saturn coming out before the system had released, and me and my little friends were like, "Oh, it's got a cartridge port on the back. I bet you can play Genesis games on it." It's like, oh, that would be so sweet, because it's not. It's like there's an absence of there's a total lack of Genesis hardware available. It's not like there's enough Genesci floating out in the world. We need the Saturn to be able to play those games too. But no, so I got my N64, put in Rogue Squadron, had that awful message pop up, and my dad's just like, "Okay, fine, get in the car." And we drove to Target and got the expansion pack. And it was like one of the greatest Christmases of my young life. I would have been 13 at the time. And so and I didn't have hardly any money, and neither did my parents. So those were my games for the next roughly 6 months, until I figured out that, shout out to Record Warehouse, wear the shirt in St. Joe. Record Warehouse in St. Joe had used N64 games, and I got Command and Conquer and StarCraft, which are absolutely the best on the N64, a system without a mouse. Until then, those were the two games I had, so they're always intrinsically linked in my mind. And so that's why I wanted to talk about them today, and talk about them kind of as a unit. Now, Rogue Squadron came out in 98. Okay. Yeah. Rogue Squadron came out in 98. And the thing that I think is really cool about it, Rogue Squadron was a collaboration between Lucas and Factor 5. And Factor 5 is one of these developers that I don't think gets celebrated enough, particularly here in North America. It was started by Julian Egbrecht in Germany. They put out games for the Amiga and for other microcomputer systems. They're really most known for the Turrican series. And then during the life of the Super Nintendo, they did an Indiana Jones game with Lucas. And LucasArts was like, "Oh, you guys are pretty cool. You should come here." And so they relocated the entire studio, including basically the whole development staff, from Germany to California, and moved over to just exclusively develop games for LucasArts. And they did Rogue Squadron, and then they did the two sequels to Rogue Squadron on the GameCube. This is a studio that has a background in run and guns, has a background in shmups. They have a background in fast-paced action games, and they're being handed the keys to Star Wars, and specifically flying around in an X-Wing shooting down TIE fighters. And I was, like I mentioned, I was 13. I was too old to just be sitting in my room with a model X-Wing going pew 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 pew, like flying around pretending to shoot down TIE fighters. Star Wars Rogue Squadron came at a perfect time in my life where I could be like, no, it's cool. I'm not like playing with toys. I'm playing a video game, and I can. It's not like I'm pretending to be an X-Wing pilot. I'm just like playing a game, guys.
With your atomic purple transparent controller.
Yes. Hell yes. With the rumble pack, or just like it had one setting of rumble, which was shake your hands into fucking dust.
Which was separate phalanges.
Yeah. We would like to reduce your hand to one sort of lukewarm pudding consistency. But yeah, so Star Wars Rogue Squadron is an arcade flight game. It takes you through the this weird little plot of you're playing as Luke Skywalker, and I think it's important to mention with this game that it came out during the height of the Star Wars expanded universe thing, which, if you're a turbo nerd like me, was a huge deal, where you had the Star Wars movies, yes, and Phantom Menace had already come out, but you also had these books and comics that expanded the story beyond, and they were all controlled by Lucasfilm in terms of maintaining a single continuity. And so, sort of.
There were a lot of them, and there is a lot of pseudo-canon stuff. But
yeah, well, and especially because some of the early books, the 80s stuff, later became non-canon, and there was also some stuff with Dark Horse Comics where they kind of went off in a direction that didn't necessarily always get reciprocated, we'll say it that way. But certainly for a lot of the big games, books and comics, they maintained a fairly unified continuity. And so by the time I was playing this game, I already knew that okay, so Rogue Squadron is this group of guys that started off as the survivors of Red Group from New Hope, and it's got Luke and Wedge Antilles, and they're gonna form this thing, because that had already been expounded upon in the books. And these games do a pretty good job of fitting in with that continuity. You're playing as Luke Skywalker, with the exception of a couple of the last levels in the game where you play as Wedge. And you are fighting the Empire during the arc of the original 3 movies, filling in the gaps between those movies. And you get to do things that touch on canon events within the film. So, for example, you get to go to Corellia, where Han's from, and you get to try and free Crixmadine, who is the Imperial general who you'd wind up seeing in the movies, who is canon a Corellian officer. You get to go to Kessel, which is a place that's been mentioned in the movies. And one of the things that I love about this game, that I think just really made it super choice for me, is it's got these ridiculous, so when you first boot up the game, when you're first creating a character, you have to input your name. You have to input your arcade style 3-letter code that you're going to be known by, your handle. There are cheats in that enable you to play all sorts of weird shit from the length and breadth of the Star Wars universe. So, for example, you get to fly as a TIE fighter, you get to fly the Millennium Falcon, you get to fly as a Naboo starfighter from Phantom Menace, you get to fly as a 1969 Buick Electra.
So I knew there were a bunch of some promotional stuff that made its way in as well.
Yeah. And then my favorite is, if you enter chicken instead of your name, you get to pilot a AT-ST Walker from Return of the Jedi and march around and stomp on rebels and shoot Jawas and shit, and it's pretty great. So the basic structure of the game is that you're playing these different missions where you're flying typically an X-Wing, but sometimes another starfighter from within the Star Wars universe.
A-Wings, Y-Wings, stuff like that.
Exactly.
And you expand additional models that you can select. And there's a limited selection for each mission, but as you go through, you can go back and replay with different craft and see how those treat you, because each craft has its own strengths. Yeah, exactly. Their stats are very different from one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically the first time you play through a mission, your ship is selected for you. you have to play as an X-Wing or a Y-Wing bomber or whatever. And then you're going through, you'll have certain mission objectives. So, for example, in the first mission, it's an attack on Mos Eisley Spaceport, as seen in New Hope. You're trying to destroy Imperial probe droids and Imperial bombers before they get a chance to destroy this city of Mos Eisley. And then at the end of the mission, you'll be graded. And depending on your grade will depend on whether or not you're able to advance to the next mission. And also if you'll be able to see sort of the end game content. So you'll be judged on accuracy, on the number of enemies that you destroyed, on the number of allied ships or personnel that you were able to save, and if you were able to, complete whatever the mission objectives are.
And how quickly you complete those objectives.
Yes.
That was always the biggest pain in the ass to me.
Yes.
How quickly you could complete it all.
Especially because a lot of the enemies that you're supposed to kill will be kind of hidden. The actual stages can be surprisingly large for an N64 game. Yeah. In particular, I'm thinking about the one right after you rescue Kassan Moore, you attack this Imperial base, and you've got Crix Maydeen is leading this group of like ground assault troops in, and you're supposed to protect them, and you have a shield generator that you have to take down. Well, there are an enormous number of like individual stormtroopers, let alone like turrets and shit, that are hidden in the background of the level. And to get gold on that, you have to basically knock out all of them. Meanwhile, there are Imperial bombers and walkers that are attacking the ground troops. And if any of the ground troops die, you won't be able to get gold.
Some of the objectives are brutal.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that the draw distance with such limited hardware, you would have to get close enough for them to even register a pixel on your screen. So it's always kind of that is what always frustrated me. You'd have to do it multiple times and kind of memorize where things are, but you can't see them. Yes. But you need to fly in that direction.
Well, and especially the other thing too is like when you get up to the level, like to either just pass it or get bronze, because there's 4 levels of completion. You can just pass the level, and you get bronze, silver, or gold. And you need a certain number of medals to be promoted in rank, which is also important for the game. But once you get past usually like bronze or silver, you're having to kill individual stormtroopers on the ground, and you can like be shooting at them, but they're so tiny that your individual lasers are like skipping around them. Mm-hmm. So what I found is the best strategy is to just get good enough that you can actually like skim the ground just about like a meter above it and just clip their heads as you're flying along. So that'll take them out real quick.
That's horrifying. I just imagine like the tech when you get back to the hangar, like later, there's just like stormtrooper guts and skulls and like bits hanging from the bottom of your X-Wing.
Pulling helmets out of air intakes and shit.
It's just like, oh God, what have you been doing?
Well, I love
getting that gold medal, bro.
Oh,
what are you talking about?
Oh, it's a nightmare.
My X-Wing is just the Reaver ship from Firefly.
Mm-hmm.
Just like skulls and blood all over it. It's a very challenging game. It's a very fun game, and it's a very like tied into the Star Wars universe game. One of my favorite things is it's divided into chapters, and each chapter has a opening crawl in the same way that like a Star Wars movie does. And the game doesn't do much musically to tie it in with the Star Wars, like it plays Star Wars music, whatever, but like those opening crawls, the feel of them was like so like it pulled me in so hard as a kid. I was like, yes, I'm fucking Luke Skywalker. I'm gonna blow up those fucking TIE fighters. I'm gonna get them. Fucking like it's just it was just so exciting to me on like a really visceral level.
games that we're playing, we'll talk about Rogue Squadron first, so I'll bounce back to Pod Racer.
Yeah.
Because I actually owned the same N64 set that you like the
racer set.
Exactly the like with the branded box and everything, and like it came with the game. I wish I could have had the
came with the game. It's came with the game.
I wish I could have had the yes. I wish I could have had the Ocarina of Time with like the gold cartridge and everything set.
That would have been sick.
But you know, it is what it is. But I never played Rogue Squadron until just last year.
Yeah.
So I played Pod Racer or Star Wars Racer when I was the same, like 13. You know, a kid. But going back and playing Rogue Squadron, I kind of had a thought about this the other day as we were planning this, and I was thinking about it because the game plays really well on good emulation.
Mm.
The game plays fantastically well, and I almost wondered, did it play well at all on an original N64 controller? Because that stick was garbage. Every game you played with the N64 stick was just trash. Let's be honest. I
have an N64 controller hooked up to my gaming PC that I use for N64 emulation.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, the N64...
Is it a modern replica or is it an actual N64 controller?
It's a modern replica.
Okay.
Yeah. But the N64 controller was clearly designed for, you know, some sort of alien that had a third arm coming out of the middle of their chest. And there's so many games that like don't map really nicely. The default solution that you see is like, oh, well, just map the C buttons to the right analog stick. But there's certain games that like that just doesn't work for. Like Ocarina of Time, for example, like doesn't like taking right analog stick inputs for playing the Ocarina melodies. And that breaks the game. And so like for Ocarina and Rogue Squadron and the like, let's be honest, like 8 other meaningful N64 games, I do like just having that N64 controller.
Yeah, I struggled a little bit with coming up with a mapping that worked for me.
Yeah.
Because the default wasn't ergonomic.
Yeah.
I think I ended up maybe even reassigning them to, even though the game has a D-pad, I think I maybe even, I don't know, I think I came up with some horrible twisted homunculus of a layout for this game in particular, because you need, especially for like the AT-AT fight where you're like tying them up and which is so cool. You really need to be able to use those, like the C button.
The C buttons are a requirement of this game, because your secondary weapon is tied to the C buttons. If you're flying an X-wing, your ability to open and close the S foils is tied to the C buttons, and those are things you're going to need to be doing. So I play this game. If I'm playing it on a PC, I play it with an N64 controller. And the game takes that tall N64 analog stick input really well. And as a matter of fact, this game is responsible for me defending the N64 analog stick for years, because I was like, no, it's possible to use it really, really well, because it made it feel like a flight stick.
In retrospect, my only problem with the original N64 controller is that the stick loosened up and got a lot of play really easily. Like, I'm pretty sure we all had a controller with just like a floppy toggle in the middle, which was also Kirk's, which was Kirk's nickname in high school, floppy toggle. So.
Oh, good old floppy toggle.
Yeah, $10 to touch it.
$20 to take a picture.
Yep.
What's an SJ?
If you have to ask, you can't
afford it.
Yeah, I pay for my swim goggles somehow.
Yeah, but no, I felt like it controlled really well, and I felt like it controlled really well even on the N64 kiosk in Montgomery Wards that every snot-nosed kid in Northwest Missouri was, I'm sure, just railing on. Although okay, so I'm not going to go through the full length and breadth of the plot because it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be really honest. This game, the joy of it was just flying an X-Wing or an A-Wing.
It's not a bad plot, but it's not important to playing the game
No.
or to getting the experience of what the game is.
But so the third level in the game is it's called Search for the Nona. For the first time, you switch from an X-Wing to an A-Wing, which are much faster, and they're also much more poorly shielded. And what I loved about that was every time I'd go to Montgomery Wards, it would be on Search for the Nona. Because some kid had booted it up, had gotten through the first 2 levels, and then immediately gotten their ass chomped by some fucking TIE interceptor. And it's like, oh, fuck this game. I'm going to go see if I can find the PlayStation 1. So I got so fucking good at Search for the Nona because every time I'd walk in, it would be there. And so, like, when I finally got the game, I was like, oh, you can play as an X-Wing? That's really cool. I thought it was an A-Wing game. But yeah, it controlled super smooth, and yeah, that so tracks with Factor 5's output in general. Like, their games were so snappy and responsive,
and I like that the ship selection matters. Like, when you get to the point where you can choose, you can kind of write your own ticket.
Yeah.
But even before then, when you're forced to use a particular ship per mission, it really determines, like, you have to be ready to change the way you play.
Yes.
Because they are dramatically different. They're not cosmetic changes. They are functional changes in the extreme.
Like, don't go through the whole game playing as the X-Wing. It's just not.
No.
I know as kids we all wanted to do that.
It's like, not as much fun though.
No. No.
And there's some of those special craft that you can get, like actually I've never played with the Buick. But like,
the Buick's fun. The Buick is, if I remember correctly, the Buick is just the Millennium Falcon again. It's just smaller. It takes up less mass, but it has the same weapons.
And there are certain missions that I don't even know that you can complete in their entirety with certain ships. Like,
right.
Like the experimental fighter is really cool because it's got these
the V-Wing.
Yeah, it's got these wild weapon options, but like, you're not going to take down an AT-AT because I don't think you can tether to it and trip them. So I don't think you can destroy them successfully.
No, you can't. And actually, that's the V-Wing's really cool. So at the very end of the game, you wind up having the assault on Mon Calamari, I believe is the name of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a scene straight from the expanded universe where the Empire has created these weapons called world destroyers that are meant to just like do exactly what they say. They're supposed to just chew up and spit out a whole planet. And in the expanded universe, it was the debut for the at that point New Republic of the V-Wing, which is this new basically replacement for the old Rebel speeders. That is a little bit. It's an atmospheric fighter, so it's not really it's more equivalent to like our current Air Force ships than like traditional Star Wars planes. I love that Factor 5 was that level of nerdy that we're like, that they're like, oh yeah, well, we have to have the V-Wings in there, right? Like, those are so cool. That'll mean something to somebody. Oh yeah. It's like the 6 of us that were reading fucking Star Wars Expanded Universe books really ate that shit up. And everybody else was like, what the fuck is this? You wind up getting a feel for how each of the different starfighters play. The X-Wing is sort of the quote-unquote default, right? Like, it's fairly strong. It's fairly durable. It has a good, like, weapons loadout.
You can switch between fast and maneuverable.
Yep. Yeah, because you can lock S-foils in attack position.
Standing by. Red 5 standing by.
Lock S-foils in attack position.
And be able to fire. But the game rewards a certain level of exploration and a certain level of like digging into, and I think this is part of the reason why the requirements for gold are so high, because if you're looking for bad guys to destroy to try and get that gold, you'll find upgrades. And the game,
That's right.
The game is like we were talking about in the last episode, how the game, some of the games that we really like to play as just like go-to games, something to kind of kill time and take our mind off what's going on, are games that enable you to sort of choose your end state or choose your difficulty option. If you try to play through Rogue Squadron without the upgrades, which are upgrades to your shields, your secondary weapons, and your primary weapons, it is a punishingly difficult game. Punishingly difficult. Particularly in that none of the secondary weapons by default in the game are heat seekers. So you have to manually align everything. You have to green shell every missile or torpedo in the game.
Some of the enemies, like by the end, some of like the TIE fighter, like the TIE interceptors, are brutally difficult to track, even just to follow, let alone shoot down.
Yeah.
I actually struggled with that, which was a fun struggle, but I mean
Right.
it was tough learning new tactics.
Well, yeah, and it makes it so that there's a number of levels where the game by default puts you in an X-wing against primarily TIE interceptors, which are faster and more maneuverable, while you're playing a by comparison sort of slow and lumbering craft. And what you learn to do is you just like we were saying, you toggle between your S-foils locked, which makes you faster and more maneuverable. And then as soon as you get snuck up behind somebody, you hit the brake. That automatically opens up the S-foils, and then you can shoot. But it's really awkward, and it's really difficult. And then the first time that you're able to go back to that level as an A-wing and chase the TIE Interceptor as an A-wing, which is a much faster and more maneuverable craft, you're like, oh, this is so sweet. This is so good. Because that third level, the Search for the Nona, teaches you that an A-wing can stand toe-to-toe with a TIE Interceptor just fine. So later on in the game, as you're, I'm thinking about, I want to say so Wedge Antilles gets captured later on in the game, and there's this really cool.
Is it the one with the train?
Yeah, it's Solo, a Star Wars story, but like good, where you're on Kessel and you're chasing this train that has Wedge Antilles on it, and you're trying to disable it without destroying it. And so you have to use the Y-Wings, because the Y-Wings have the ion cannons. Yeah, because you're trying to just knock it out. But what you can do is you can come back and play that level as an A-Wing, just kill everything. And then because you've killed everything, your friends can use the ion cannons. The other Rogue Squadron planes aren't constantly having to dodge. They can use the ion cannons. They can take down the fucking train. And you've saved yourself an enormous amount of trouble. But yeah, it's a really fucking fun game. And it is the most quintessentially Star Wars game to me. If you want the experience of the Battle of Yavin against the first Death Star, if you want that feeling, these games do it. That actually, specifically the attack on the Death Star at the end of New Hope is the first playable scenario in the direct sequel to this on GameCube. So that's a good one to keep in mind as well. And don't play the first sequel, the N64 Battle for Naboo game that Factor 5 and Lucas did together, because other than listening to a lot of Sting and drinking rum that I had snuck into the house while I played my rental copy of Battle of Naboo. I don't have many fond memories for that one at all. that game is just nothing but Brand New Day by Sting and
That seems kind of discordant.
and Admiral Nelson.
I knew there was something wrong with you.
Oh, this is when you're learning it.
It's like I'm having my red string on the post board, like connecting all the dots finally. It's always sunny moment.
The only problem in my younger years with this game was, I would go over to a friend's house.
Yeah.
And we would have collectively all these N64 games.
Right.
But it's not exactly a game you can, I guess, easily play together.
Yeah, it's which is it sucks for the N64, which was such a local multiplayer focused console.
Yeah, because it was like the first one to have 4 ports in front of it.
Yeah.
And that really shines through with games like Super Smash Brothers or whatever. But and a lot of times too, I had friends that were more like, well, why would we play Rogue Squadron when it's basically Star Fox 64 with Star Wars? I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I kind of disagree with that, but I kind of get it from a flight sim kind of a thing. So my exposure to it growing up was very, honestly, really minimal.
Yeah.
Because if I was playing a game, it was usually with somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
So I never really got around to playing Rogue Squadron until much later, probably college, and I was just looking for something to do, and then going through and playing it again recently. Like when we were talking about how we kind of had to come up with our own control schemes.
Yeah.
Well, the game was eventually released on Steam, and they've got some good controller profiles out there for modern controllers, which
I didn't know that.
which oddly work really well. So that's nice. I think it still goes for like $10 on Steam, which you'd think it would be much cheaper.
I'll pay $10 for it. I'll get it right now. He stands up, walks away.
Stands up, walks away.
Fuck this! I'm gonna go play Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I really didn't play the game too much, and then even as I was replaying it, like, it was fun.
Yeah.
But it's a very simple game. I really don't know what else to say about it, though.
It was.
I think it invites nostalgia.
If you're in 2024 and you're like, hey, I want to fly an X-wing, I think there's probably better options. I mean, first off, the 2 GameCube games, but I think there's probably better options now. But in 1998, I think it was probably, and this is even including like the X-Wing and X-Wing versus TIE Fighter games, I think this was probably the most immersive, badass way to experience that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it probably has some of the most Star Wars feel of any of the games that I owned. I think I still have my copy of X-Wing versus Starfighter versus TIE Fighter.
Yeah, you were mentioning that.
And it's fun. It was the game that inspired, or that got me to buy like a control stick for my PC.
Oh my god!
That like connected to like a serial port, like back in the good old days. But
the good old terrible days
yes.
of PC gaming,
and that was fun. But
my Gravis gamepad and I were going to get through X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
At that level, it just feels like a space flight sim with combat, and not super Star Warsy, where like you're just like, Rogue Squadron is steeped in lore. Like we talked about the plot not being critical to our conversation, because it's not,
right?
But for flavor, like when you're in it, you get Star Wars from top to bottom.
Well, and just the fact that like, oh, Crix Madine, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's in there for sure.
Yeah,
you know what
Wedge
I mean?
Antilles, and all these names that get dropped during and familiar, lots of familiar planet names and
Yes.
system names and
Well, yeah, and I can't even remember the name of the planet, but they go to the planet where Bacta's from. And like if you're that level of turbo nerd where you know about like the whole like lore about Bacta and like the healing liquid that is like this like critical resource in the Star Wars universe. And there's even a expanded universe trilogy called the Bacta Wars. Like this is a thing that is very important to the like expanded universe Star Wars stuff. Yeah, they fucking like that's a huge component of this game. And yeah, it feels like such a loving, like it feels like a game that had so much love for the texture and feel of Star Wars circa 1998.
Mm-hmm. I think because of just the low amount of exposure I had to it growing up, and then not playing it until, you know, my later collegiate years, and then even then not really caring for it, and then coming back to playing it, since I don't have that nostalgia boner for it, honestly, I was just like, this is kind of a boring game. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's a bad game. I just think comparatively to other games I've played, it's just, again, because I had such little exposure to it.
Sure.
I just didn't find it as fun. Like in my younger years, sure, I thought it was wonderful and fantastic. I don't know if I've just been spoiled, and maybe I just didn't get to play it enough when I was younger. But I just
that's interesting.
Going back and kind of replaying it, and with everything I had going on in my life, I admitted to Brent before we recorded, I got to like the very end of chapter 2, the Kessel, Return to Kessel mission and whatnot.
One of my favorites, yeah.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy myself.
Sure.
I just think in the grand scheme of things, I was just kind of bored. But that's me saying, in my current age,
sure,
getting used to what we're used to playing now, where you got this constant feedback loop, and then I go back and playing an older game that I already didn't have much exposure to begin with.
Well, that's really interesting. I never played this game until 2023, and this is where we're going to distinguish ourselves from Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah,
where like I actually really liked Rogue Squadron. Like I had fun. I did not find that one boring at all.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
No, I still like it.
I never played it once before last year.
Well, and to me, it's like it still like controls very well. The plot is serviceable. It moves the pace along. If you're looking for if what you're looking for is Star Wars space fighter combat,
yeah, this game's
fucking excellent. And I don't know that it is aged very much. One of the things that I think Factor 5, and the reason why I keep coming back to it, because I want to talk about this for just a second. Factor 5 is a really interesting developer. If you go back and look at the history of what they did, they're known for the Turrican games, which are just badass run and gun games across a number of different platforms. They did Katakis on the Amiga, and they did the Amiga port of R-Type, which are both games that are notable for sort of pushing the Amiga hardware past what anybody else thought it was capable of in terms of the speed and fluidity of the action. And that's what I think they achieved here as well. Certainly, if you like look at emulation, like GameCube and N64 emulation, a lot of times people are like, "Oh yeah, I can run any GameCube game except the 2 Factor 5 games. I can run anything on N64 on this device except Perfect Dark and Rogue Squadron." Like, you know what I mean? Like they did push the hardware past what most people thought it was capable of in really interesting ways. And I think that shows up just in terms of like the game is super fluid. It moves super fast.
And graphically, it was really pleasing compared to a lot of the other games out there.
Graphically, it's
that's why when I had all those friends, I was like, well, why don't we just play like Star Fox 64? I'm like, it's not as graphically pleasing by a wide margin.
No.
Like, you're just playing it because you like Star Fox, which we all did.
one that I'm just impressed by the fact that they were able to texture everything.
Mhm.
And it's not that far off in terms of quality, like I guess in terms of gameplay and what we have now. If you texture it up into HD and bump the draw distance way up and release it as an indie title, it succeeds today.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I is frustrating to me. No, I think definitely. Like I to me, one of the things that is frustrating, and like I do, and like see now I need to go look at the Steam version, because one of the things that is frustrating to me about this game is just that the only places where I feel like it really gets held back are it's an N64 game, right? It's got the minuscule texture cache, which means that everything looks kind of You've got the very shallow draw distance of the N64. You've got the fact that it's in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and so if you're playing it on a modern device, you've got the massive pillar boxing. You've got the wacky controller that was designed by someone from Mars. The things that hold Rogue Squadron back are the fact that it was on the N64. And so, yeah, I'll have to go check out the Steam version, because I even some pretty minimal changes and upgrades to this game, I think, would make it really, really fun and really, really like comparable to games that are coming out even today.
It probably bears some caution. So when we talked about this game last year, like Brent and I a little bit talked about it, and kind of was what inspired me to play it. I looked at the Steam version. We'll have to look and see if they patched things, but there were a lot of problems with playability, even like runtime execution errors, like not even be able to run the game. So just do your research. Do your own research and
get good.
Just check the comments and see if people are still like, fuck this thing or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's it's interesting too, because while Rogue Squadron is sort of trapped into being a N64 game, the other game, the one that actually came with my N64, did have a contemporaneous release on another platform, because Star Wars Racer came out on the Dreamcast. And if you're playing this game today, I would strongly, and it's on the Switch too. Star Wars Racer is available everywhere. You can get it on the Switch, you can get it on PS4, you can get it on Windows, you can get it on... But just get the fucking Dreamcast ROM, and then you can play it in widescreen, and you can up-res it, and it doesn't expect weird-ass N64 inputs. So, yeah, there's no reason to pay money for this. Sorry, piracy, but yeah. But Star Wars Racer is actually
You mean you don't want to pay money for a game that hasn't been in support for like 20 some years?
Yeah, it's shocking. I know I'm weird. I'm just edgy like that. I'm just breaking the law.
Yeah. Oh, so good to skirt regulations. Oh man.
Oh God. So the other game that I had,
whatever, I'm just a Maverick Renegade. It's fine. Yeah, I steal shit.
You can't hang out with me, girl. I'm dangerous.
Yeah.
I might play a game from 1998 without paying for it.
Without asking for Nintendo or whoever's permission.
Yeah.
Once more, Daddy Nintendo comes to spank us.
Oh God. I mean, is it gonna be Miyamoto? Because I might be okay with that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So the other game we wanted to talk about today was Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which came out in 1999. As I previously mentioned, it's the game that came with my console. And it is an even simpler game. There was an arcade Star Wars Pod Racer game that I think Sega put out. This is an unrelated game. That one's super fun, like it's because you can actually get in the thing. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, it's obviously based on the pod racing section from Phantom Menace, which don't hold that against it. It's actually a super fun racing game today. And the main reason why, so just real quick, the basic conceit of the game, you play as a pod racer. You're trying to go through 4 different circuits. You've got an amateur, a semi-pro, professional, and then an invitational circuit. The invitational circuit you can get into as soon as you win any of the other 3. But sort of to paraphrase Breath of the Wild, it would be extremely rash for you to go into the invitational circuit after just beating the amateur one, because you'll get your face creamed in. Creamed in. Oh, God. That sounds way worse than what I meant.
Describe it in detail.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So, Kirk, when you cream something...
Yeah. Show us with your penis.
By running.
Yeah.
So we can time it.
We're not going to get into that again. Okay, here we go.
Now we've determined which order these come out in.
Phrasing?
Now! The thing that makes this game, and then as you win races, you can acquire money to upgrade your vehicle. You also, as you beat certain racers, you get the opportunity to switch to them. And so the quote unquote correct strategy in this is to try and beat as much of it as you can without upgrading your ship, and then just flip to somebody else who's better and then upgrade theirs. The thing that makes this game fantastic is just the physics of the pod racers themselves, because they've done a really good job of replicating the feel of it, which basically it feels like you're racing chariots.
Yeah, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, the momentum of it is really cool. Like, this is one of the only games that exists where there are ice levels that are more fun to play than the regular levels, because the momentum of like basically doing a handbrake turn with your pod racer, where the engines are like shooting to the left while you're shooting to the right, and the whole thing is like ricketing and bouncing back and forth, is so much fun. It really is. Like, you'll know in the first 5 minutes of playing this game whether this is a game that's going to be worth playing for you. There's no plot. There's no frills at all. You just boot it up, you start racing, and as soon as you get the vibe of the physics, and I do love too, because the physics are different between different racers. There are racers who their ships are one piece. They're just a regular ass like ship, and they control completely differently.
I think, don't you start out with one that's very similar to the one that Anakin pilots or races in the movie, right?
Yes. So when you start out, you get the choice between, I think, like 7-ish racers, and one of them is Anakin. And so I think most people just start as Anakin, because why wouldn't you? Anakin is not the way to win this game. Gazgano is probably my favorite of like the early ones, just because he's got these massive, like, his ship has by default much more like acceleration and speed because he has these massive engines, but that makes him absolutely bullshit at turning. So I just smash into stuff all the time and then constantly hold down the right bumper to try and, because your ship can kind of heal itself up to a certain extent, at the expense of speed. The other thing that this has that is different from other sci-fi racers like the Wipeout series or whatever or F-Zero, is that this has the ability to boost your ship at the expense of temperature. So what you do is you push the analog stick forward, you'll see the green bar of the temperature of your ship continue to go up and up and up and up and up until all of a sudden it says, okay, hit the boost. And when you do, your ship will boost up to a higher speed, but you'll have basically a ticking timer of how much time you have until your ship overheats and explodes. And that will be impacted by the temperature of the racetrack. So if you're on Tatooine or somewhere else where it's hot, that will go up really fast, which is another reason probably why I like the ice levels, because you can boost constantly and for long stretches of time, and it really doesn't affect you. It's a super, like, very, very simple little arcade-style racer. There's very limited other gameplay options. I did actually consider listing this as one of my, like, go-to just, like, relaxing games, because I do play it in that way quite a bit. Especially I'll just replay the amateur circuit and just kick everybody's ass. But this game, for me, my abiding memory of this game is this was what I did when I listened to music when I was like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. I would throw, because the music is very minimal. It's almost like going all the way back to Captain Skyhawk. Like, the music in this is good because it's Star Wars music. It's John Williams. But there's big stretches where it's just silent or really close to silent. And then the music will, like, swell when something dramatic's happening, which is cool.
You might be on a straightaway kind of on your own, and there's just kind of nothing but the sound of the
wind
and the engines running, and you're just kind of, you don't necessarily expect that of a game of this type, maybe, but not that it's a problem, like you said, but
yeah, it's not bad, but it's just like so many arcade style racers like are all about the music, right? Like, that's kind of the draw.
Yeah.
And this game doesn't hardly like lean into that at all.
Like your Rush series, like your San Francisco Rush or whatever, is like all about like metal music in the background every second of every race.
Or like the cruising games.
Yeah.
Need for Speed Shift.
Yes.
Yeah, a really good soundtrack.
Well, even Twisted Metal.
Yeah. And like this game,
Crazy Taxi. Let's just list driving games.
Oh God, I love Crazy Taxi so much. But yeah, like this game, because it didn't have any of that, like, to me, I associate Star Wars Episode 1 Racer with, like, all the, like, just dog shit nu metal that I was into when I was, like, 13. It's like, yeah, okay, let me throw on Korn's Untouchables and, like, or fucking Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. It's like, oh, yeah, we're going to listen to some Stained and play some Star Wars Pod Racer. It's going to be a good night.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's extreme, man.
I kind of wonder, though, if that was just a limitation of the hardware and the sheer lack of storage on the cartridge compared to all the other games we mentioned are all CDs, so or DVDs, whatever.
I think
but still,
there's probably something to that, and the only thing that I would say is it's like, I wonder if, because the Dreamcast version is the same way, and so I wonder if this game was developed for the N64 and then they just ported it to the Dreamcast, and so it stayed that way. Because I think if this had been like a PS1 racer with access to a CD, they would have just streamed Red Book audio over the whole damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably would be better as a result.
The thing that always stuck out the most to me about this game, well, I was dog shit, not slamming the walls and bust up my engines all the time, but that's part of the uniqueness. Now, to my knowledge, looking back, I don't think that there is any other game where repair was part of the mechanic.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of the other racer games I played around that time, like I think Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the original one, was out around that time. Like Test Drive 5, I think it was around that time. None of those games really leaned into that repair mechanic, because that also at the same time, like, you can't repair your car while you're driving it. You'd have to do that after the fact. But with the Pod Racer game, that was part of it. And a lot of times, I mean, if you didn't repair it, your pod was going to explode, and then you'd waste a lot of time having to respawn. So, but also when you repair, it slows you down.
It's almost like a pit stop.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of strategy.
And you're right, though.
And I like they copied the sounds from the movie too, like, and make that siren sound when it was repairing and stuff. Yeah.
I think couldn't even the other racers also like basically destroy you? Like they could ram you. And
Yes.
just-
Yeah.
So I remember that being a struggle for me as like 13-year-old kid trying to learn how to play this and just getting
F-Zero
my shit wrecked.
F-Zero has the repair like strips, the energy like, but it's because it's in the same place every time, and because you can go full speed through it. Like it definitely doesn't have the same feel at all. Like there's more strategy with it with Racer, where you do have that. You have to decide, okay, I'm willing to take that cut in speed to not explode.
The closest equivalent of a racer in my mind that we have today that best matches Star Wars 1 Racer is Redout. If you've ever played Redout.
I
I thought you were going to say Destiny Sparrow Racing.
Oh god, I wish they'd bring back the SRL, but they're not. No, if you've ever heard of or wanted to ever play Redout, get it on Steam. It's like Pod Racer on steroids.
Okay.
They have things like repair mechanics, and if you slam into like you get damage, obviously that you have to repair throughout, and you're in ships that kind of float just like a pod racer. I remember the first time I played Redout, I was like, oh, this was kind of like Star Wars Pod Racer.
Nice.
It's a lot of fun. So it was really, and it was I sunk a lot of hours into that game. So when I got to go back and replay Star Wars Racer 1 or Star Wars 1 Racer, it really reminded me a lot like, oh, so this is like the precursor to Redout. Because if you've ever played it, you'll know exactly what I mean, and being able to upgrade your ship and things like that, or just switch to a completely new one. But it's been so long since I played a racing game where repairing while you're racing was part of the main mechanics of it.
Yeah.
Because if you try to go to, well, I think we mentioned like Need for Speed Shift or whatever. I mean, that game's like 10 years old now, but they don't want to take away from the realism. So you can't repair while you're driving, because that doesn't really...
That's not a thing.
It's not a thing. But in that universe, it is a thing. So that's what always stuck out to me in this game, just like how your Vigilante 8 and your Twisted Metal, you had weapons, and it was like it was a destruction derby with like guns and stuff. That's what made those unique. You got your Need for Speed and Test Drive games, and Gran Turismo, which go for realism, and then you have these space push the fantasy kind of games, like you got Redout, Star Wars 1 Racer. I can't say it's my favorite racer. I mean, there's so many out there. But it was I always enjoyed it. Every chance I got to play it as a kid or even as an adult, I can't say I ever really had a bad time.
Yeah.
Unless some asshole like ran me over and I was using a smaller pod and just damaged the shit out of me, and it's like, or slam me into a wall, and I'd be like, all right, well, just went from first to last in a hurry.
The only time I ever had a bad time playing Star Wars Racer is there's a couple of them levels where you wind up going into a zero gravity tunnel, and you have to like navigate around the like asteroid things. They are such bullshit because A, it doesn't control like anything else in the game, and B, it's like the fucking asteroids have gravity or something. They pull you into them. Like I'll be like pushing all the way hard right on the analog stick, and my fucking pod racer will go left into the fucking asteroid. I'll be like, fuck this. And then I'll spike my N64 controller into the ground, pound my Mountain Dew, take a bite of my stuffed crust pizza, and go, Mom!
Yeah.
This is why TVs were CRT and had such thick glass panels on, because you couldn't tomahawk an N64 controller through a 32-inch CRT screen, because that thing was just going to shatter on the surface, whereas the flat screens we have today are basically tissue paper.
I think I know that track you're talking about. I think, is that the Abyss track? Is that the name of it? Oh, man. That's
also an N64 controller with the rumble pack attached is classified in most states as a deadly weapon.
Yeah, pretty heavy.
If you huck that, like if you're playing fucking GoldenEye and you huck that at your friend,
we're going down hard.
Yeah.
Well, that fucker deserved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he selected Odd Job during multiplayer. Who the fuck does that?
But yeah, I like, for me, it's the Star Wars Racer is the new metal game, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. And so yeah, if I have a recommendation, it's go play Rogue Squadron because it's a legit good game.
Mhm.
And if you want to know what 1999 felt like, put on Disturbed, put on a little Down with the Sickness, crack open a Mountain Dew, take a bite of stuffed crust Pizza Hut pizza, and play some Star Wars Racer.
And to go along with that, and partially because we're obligated to mention it, like the sound bites
Yeah.
of all the pilots while you're
God.
racing are just
Chuba! Boshka! Chuba!
we had a friend who we kind of revealed one of our
yeah. It was like
one of our
that's pod racing.
yeah we revealed
That's what I call
our-
pod racing.
and it's just full of the cheesiest cheese, but it's great.
And what
So-
a Nawada!
So to go along with that, like watch episode 1 if you haven't, and enjoy
Once.
the disastrous mess that is Jar Jar Binks and the rest of it,
Watch it once.
and then play Star Wars Racer to enjoy the references.
Oh, we didn't even mention in the fucking shop that you can repair your ship in is the fucking douchebag from
That's right,
the
slaver,
Watto.
basically.
yeah the incredibly racist alien flying dude.
Watto, I think his name is.
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
it Watto?
yeah. Hey, they come to my shop, they no buy. Why nobody ever buy?
See, we almost missed this gold.
Oh God, I hated him so bad. Maybe that's why I always muted the fucking game. It's not actually the lack of music. It's just the fact that I would rather listen to fucking David Draymond go, oh, wah! than listen to the fucking...
That guy or Anakin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab my icy and get some Little Caesars and play some fucking pod racing.
Oh, it's gonna be so sick, bro.
I'm gonna get
Sometimes
some
my
2 liter-
mom lets me buy Surge.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some Jolt Cola.
Oh, yes. It's too late for Crystal Pepsi. That's like 96. I loved Crystal Pepsi.
I think Pepsi Blue was like early 2000s, was it not?
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys remember the Crystal Kool-Aid? Oh my God, that was the sickest thing. They had, this is the most 90s thing that
You
existed.
mean Crystal Light?
No. They had blue raspberry, which is a thing that doesn't exist and is dependent on color.
Mm-hmm.
Blue raspberry clear Kool-Aid.
Weird.
That's just raspberry Kool-Aid, people.
That's wow. That's just raspberry Kool-Aid with extra steps.
Right. All right. Do you, either of you guys have anything more to say about, like, this was supposed to be just a fun one with some shorter games because we've had big games. So
Because I punished all of your ears for 6 hours.
dude, it was great. I had a blast. But I mean, both
I loved it.
both Chrono Trigger and Link's Awakening were like real, actual meaty games, and I was like, I can't handle this much meat, guys.
We needed some like tapas after eating steak and potatoes the night before, right?
Exactly. But yeah, do either of you guys have anything that you wanted to get to on either of these two games?
I'm gonna drink some Pepsi Blue and eat some Mambas while I just trying to
I need some
name
Jenko
obscure shit.
jeans. See
Yeah,
if my mom
yeah,
can
slip
get it for
on my
me.
comfy Jenko jeans, my Jenko borders, and then put on my Lucky t-shirt. Oh,
And-
well, I think Lucky was after.
And then masturbate to my Britney Spears poster.
fuck yeah, dude.
I mean, what?
or was it Carmen Electra back in those days? I don't remember. I
when
think
did fucking the girl
Or National Geographic if you had it.
yeah.
Cindy Crawford. Is that who you're thinking of?
No,
That-
no,
she
I
was like
thinking about,
90s.
the girl who's in Jesus. Okay.
Give us something, man.
I know. Hang on.
Just name a movie they're in or something.
well, hang on. Give me a second. I got this. I have this.
If it's Star Wars, Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman. Yeah, Natalie Portman was like pretty, but she was never hot to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. Clearly, I am. If you've listened to this podcast for this long, you know I am.
I'm trying to think of 90s hotties.
She was more like, this gal's more early 2000s.
Mandy Moore?
What's the oh, well, yeah.
Okay.
What was the one? Okay, there's the comic book movie, and it's black and white. Sin City. The chick in Sin City.
Multiple chicks.
Rosario
Dawson.
No,
she's in it, and she's a hottie.
Yes.
Why can't I think of her?
Hang on.
Now?
I'm like so close. I mean,
wait. Hold on.
Are we not doing phrasing?
Jessica Alba. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, she kind of owned that era and then faded into obscurity.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to her.
I never really found her to be that super attractive, but she was super attractive in that movie.
Yes.
In Sin City for sure.
Yes. What? Also, the chick from fucking Gilmore Girls was in that.
Oh,
surprisingly hot in that.
Oh, Jessica Biel?
No.
Was that? No?
No. Hang on. What's her name?
She was the one who kind of betrays all the other prostitutes. I know who he's talking about. I just can't remember her name.
Yeah.
And she was in
Alexis
Gilmore Girls.
Bledel.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah. She had she's like one of the few splashes of color in that movie because her blue eyes, they don't cut out.
She was in Star Wars too. No, she wasn't. I was just trying to make a connection back to what we were talking about, and I'm like, oh, fucking I don't know.
I mean, let's be honest. Everybody's in Star Wars. I mean, Rosario Dawson. Obviously, I need another beer.
Yeah.
Or better dentures.
But yeah, Rosario Dawson's in Star Wars now, so.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's all full circle. It makes sense.
It does. It will with some strategic editing.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, hey, thank you guys for joining us here on the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm going to wave.
Why are you waving to us, Brent?
To no one in particular, because that makes sense. If you like what we're doing here, what the fuck's wrong with you?
But thank you anyway.
Yeah. Now, if you like what...
It's like the second time he's broken this episode. I love it.
Okay, if you like what we're doing here, join us on Discord. Podcast available on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, blah, blah, blah. Got a Facebook page. You can come yak at me there. I'm usually posting grumpy old man shit about how video games are being destroyed by capitalism. And come talk to me there or on Discord or whatever. We are going to be covering the first game in the Halo series next episode. So if you haven't gone back and played that, do that. You'll probably do better at it on your first playthrough than I am on like my 18th, because I'm very bad at FPS games. I don't know if I've mentioned that before.
It's true. I was watching him earlier. It was really bad.
Yeah, it's very embarrassing. And with that, good night. Thanks for joining us here on the Games That Made Us podcast.
Get yourself some Venusian Space Poison.
Yes.